Alright, it was another dogfight between the Pistons and the Celts, because as expected, both sides were taking away the paint as much as possible, so at the rim, there were a lot of whistles and a lot of O-boards, whether it was from a crash or cleanup from all the helping, or even some of those leading to loose ball fouls. It was just a war zone down low, because both sides were always shrinking the floor, so they were heavy in the gaps, and the game plans on defense were basically the exact same. The bigs were always looking to protect the rim, no matter if it was a high or low rotation, and the guards were always hounding their man, no matter if they were on or off the rock, so there was nothing easy at all, especially for the stars, because Jalen and Cade weren't getting anywhere without seeing multiple bodies. Jalen was definitely getting frustrated by the Pistons' physicality, because he was yelling on every single one of his drives, and it didn't matter who was guarding him, whether it was Tobias or even Dunk, Cade, and Duran whenever he tried to hunt one of those three, so he had to earn every single point he scored. But the Pistons were willing to live with all the tough buckets, as long as him and the rest of the Celts earned them, and it was the same philosophy with the fouls, because those were better than giving up lays at the rim, so those weren't even necessarily an issue. To the Celts' credit, they did convert at the line, so even though their paint points were low, at least they were able to make up for that category in free throws, and they were getting creative on how to open up driving lanes, because I saw them run an inverted Spain variation at times. They were having their guards as the first screener, then their bigs as the second, and it was basically just a misdirection, because the Pistons were going to be hugged up until the play transpired, so that allowed them to exploit the spaces opening up. I think Jalen was able to get downhill a couple times off those, and really in any of their screening actions, they were able to come off clean once they turned the corner, because the Pistons bigs were either dropping, veering too late, or getting caught out of position, so they were burning the Pistons bigs throughout. Duran should have been way higher with his levels, because whenever he was showing or switching, he was able to contain the rock, so his main issue was just the inconsistency in his coverages, and Stewie's main issue was just his positioning. He was usually jumping the screen or getting caught by the reject, and the Celts exploiting those two in their screening actions were by far their best source of offense on the night, because other than those, they weren't generating quality looks. They were either relying on tough shot making or catching the Pistons in help, because the way the Pistons sit in the gaps, it was inevitable for them to be in a scramble from all the tagging, cracking, or peeling, but at least more times than not, they contained the rock and were consistent with their backside rotations, so they were getting a lot of stops. All of those were a big part of their offense, because those were allowing them to play with pace, so they were able to catch the Celts defense not being set throughout, and those runouts were one of their main sources of offense. In the half court, Cade was another source, because he was obviously handling the rock in a lot of their screening actions, and they even had to run a lot of three-man actions just to break Jalen's pressure on him. Jalen's gotta be one of the most conditioned players in the league, because he was taking a beating on offense, then on defense, he was getting up on Cade's body on or off the rock, and he was chasing over every screen. But he didn't do it alone, because the rest of the Celts were always in help whenever Cade was coming off a screen, so more times than not, Cade had to either take a tough shot or get off the rock, and even though he did manipulate the screening actions throughout, I think the Pistons should have stopped running as many as they did. The Celts' game plan was to show him a crowd, then against the others, they were having their bigs drop and even having their guards go under screens, because they were basically daring the Pistons into shooting, so the Pistons weren't really getting an advantage through their screening actions. Instead of screens, the Pistons should have just doubled down on the post dumps, because same as the last matchup, the Celts had White assigned to Tobias, and that was basically barbecue chicken every time, so that was by far their best advantage on the night. Whenever Tobias was a spot up in the corner, that was playing right into the Celts' hands, because the Celts want White as the low man, and by forcing him into the post, That was forcing him into a disadvantageous position, so the Celtics couldn't use him the way they would have wanted to. If anything, the Pistons could have even pounded the rock with Cade or the rest of them, because the Celtics weren't willing to commit a hard double, so they could have exploited their size advantage more, and surprisingly, the only noticeable adjustment from the Celtics was against their screening actions. In the fourth, Cade was assigned to Asar, because first, the Celtics wanted him to cheat off Asar and protect the rim. Then second, that meant Hauser was assigned to Duren, so that would allow Hauser to just switch onto Cade and Duren's two-man game. And that did work for a stretch, but not enough to get them the stops they needed. Cade and Asar were able to exploit those matchups for 3 big buckets, including 2 crucial trays from Tobias down the wire, and earlier in the quarter, Ivy and Dunk hit crucial trays of their own, so those two deserve just as much credit. In a game of buckets, the Pistons fortunately made timely shots, and unfortunately for the Celtics, they didn't, because Jalen smoked a crucial pair of free throws down the wire, then went on to miss a decent look in the mid-range to call game. Just watch the tape.
For the win, the bounce, no! Detroit survives!